You're listening to the Disruptive Franchise Podcast with Stacey Cann, the podcast that celebrates innovation in franchising and peeks behind the curtain of failure, success, and the future of the franchise industry. Hello everybody, welcome to this week's episode of the Disruptive Franchise Podcast with me, Stacey Cann. This week is a solo episode and I'm going to be talking about the trust recession that we're in from a sales point of view. Now, you'd have to be like head in the sand to notice that the news is constantly reporting about how bad the economy is and how negative everything feels. But alongside that, there is a huge trend in the online sales world at the moment from coaches and gurus and anyone selling courses and things like memberships and masterminds. They're all talking about a trust recession. So what I mean by that is that it's much harder now to sell things online because people are not as trusting. A couple of years ago, you could put out a Facebook post, fill up a class with a link, or you could do a launch, which is hard work, don't get me wrong, but you could do a launch and make a huge amount of money from launching a product online. And what's happening now actually is that all these online gurus are finding that that is no longer the case because it's much, much harder to get people to buy when they lack trust. How does this relate to the franchise industry? Well, I'm going to tell you. From a franchise point of view, it's always been quite different between kind of selling franchises and selling online assets. However, in the world that we live in, we are selling our franchises online. So therefore, though we're not online sales companies, we are selling online. So this is absolutely relevant to our industry. From a trust point of view, with franchising, we've always had to work a lot harder to build the trust. Someone's going to invest potentially their life savings in working in part of our business and buying that business in a box from us. They're going to need to massively trust us an awful lot more than if they were going to, let's say, buy a one-off course. So we've always had to work much harder from a trust point of view there. What we're finding with online sales is that where once upon a time we could just put some posts up and say, hey, come buy my thing, come buy our franchise and sell franchises, that is no longer the case. And I actually think that this is not a bad thing. From a trust recession point of view, where people are less trusting, it's because there is a feeling of maybe less transparency online. Everyone is a little bit wiser to online sales tactics. So whereas a couple of years ago, you'd go into a free challenge for 3 days, actually people now know that that's a sales tactic. So all of the tips and tricks that would work before, they still work, but we've got to work harder at them. The other thing about this trust recession is that we're in a world of AI. And so what's happening is, whereas a couple of years ago, we'd have to show up to actually do our thing. I would have to be here recording this as I am now. Because we're now in that world of AI, people are less trusting about what they're actually seeing. So I am here recording this. These things are real. But equally, there's any number of podcasts out there where actually it's all been AI created, where it's not actually the person sitting filming. They've got a robot doing their voice and a background. So we're far less trusting about everything that we see. We're questioning more and we need more validity. What we're also looking for massively is authenticity. And this is a general buyer's market. We are looking for people who are authentic so that our brain gives us the right signals to then go and trust what we're seeing. So again, from a franchise sales point of view, whereas before we'd say, hey, come buy our franchise, it's brilliant, it's going to change your life. We now have to actually get people to invest in us as people behind the franchise. This is where personal brand is becoming more and more important, not just in franchise, but also in online sales. How do we navigate this kind of new change in the market? Well, we have to show up as our authentic selves. We have to be able to be actually present and visible. We can't hide behind our brands anymore. So once upon a time in franchising, it was a massive bonus that you had a national brand or you had an established brand. People still want that, but they also need to get to know the person behind it. So they're not going to give you £10,000 for your franchise just because you've got a good brand. They're giving you £10,000 for your franchise because of you, the franchisor who sits behind it. You are the infrastructure, you are the value system, you are the belief. And if you're not showing up online where people can see and get to know you, they're not going to invest as willingly. The other big shift that we're seeing here is as our franchise buyers potentially get younger. Now, the average age of a franchisee in the UK is around about 50. That is across all markets. In lifestyle, it's probably closer to late 30s, early 40s. But the buyers, of course, we're living in an aging generation. So the franchise industry has seen a huge dip in people under 30 buying franchises. It's actually at an all-time low of 7% in the UK. So 7% of franchisees are under 30 at this point, considered a young person in franchising. And it's because as we move more towards Gen Z being the buyers, they don't trust brands. They've had bad experiences with brands. They're not going to buy just because of a brand. They're going to buy because of the person and the relationship and the authenticity. So what do you need to do as a franchisor to help you through this I was going to say state, this changed state? Well, you need to show up as yourself. You need to show who you are, not just the brand. So a couple of years ago, a franchise would maybe have a franchise social media account. Now, actually, you're going to be more successful if you have a founder's social media account where they can get to know you. Are you running a marathon? Great, share and talk about that, even if it's not related to your franchise. What is life like behind the scenes of being a franchisor in a business? We have to show who we really are, because people need to make emotional connection with you. If they can't emotionally connect with you, they're not going to invest in your franchise. It's really that simple. The other key thing that we need to do is we need to change our messaging. So rather than come buy my franchise, we've got to give them a whole range of messaging about why they should buy the franchise. We need to educate them in what a franchise actually is and that it's more than McDonald's. Because let me tell you, whenever I ask anyone about franchises, McDonald's, it's so much more than that. We have to tell them it's so much more than that. We have to educate our audience. The other thing that we have to do is we have to show them a return on investment. It's not enough to say, come buy my franchise. We have to tell them how they're going to get their money back. And no, we don't want to give away all of our trade secrets. But if we can't be realistic and transparent about how much they're going to earn and how they're going to earn it, then there's absolutely no way people are going to come and invest in your franchise, because they're not going to be able to see how they get the money versus going and doing something else with that money. The other thing that we need to do in our messaging is we need to be clear about what the benefits are and how they hit the pain point for the franchisee. So once upon a time, we would tell people in our audience that buying a franchise will give them the flexible work-life balance that they want. But the world has changed. That is now a given. Most corporates will give people the flexible work-life balance that they want. So now we have to differentiate. It's not enough to say we give you a flexible work-life balance. That's just a nice to have. That's like a bank telling you that they'll give you, access to an ATM machine if you get a bank card. It's a feature. It's not a benefit. So what are the true benefits? How are you going to really solve the problems that those potential franchisees have? So rather than saying flexible work-life balance, instead, if it's a lifestyle brand, you might say never miss another sports day. That message is the same, but it's completely different. It's going to speak to people in a completely different way. For you to nail this messaging, you of course have to really fully understand who your ideal franchisee is and really speak to them down the camera rather than the general, hey, anyone want to buy the franchise? You see a theme here. The other thing that we have to do from a franchise point of view is we have to show a really good storytelling position that we have. So franchisees that you've already got, what are they doing? What were they doing before? How have they got on? How have they found the training? Showcase your franchise through storytelling. It's so much more powerful than here's some bullet points, or here's a like flat unfeeling post. We learn through storytelling. Simple. As children, we're told cautionary tales about Red Riding Hood going into the woods because our brains remember stories better. We remember how we felt when we listened to the story. And that's exactly how you're going to need to be marketing your franchise as well, above and beyond come buy the franchise. So those are some things that we can do when we're, in this trust recession. I think the most important thing that we can do of anything is to make sure that the nurture sequence is long tail. A couple of years ago, I was telling people you need a nurture sequence of 5 emails in 7 days so that they could Netflix binge you. So when somebody sees a franchise and they put their details in to get the brochure, we used to advise 5 emails in that kind of 7-day period initially, so that they could really get to know you and really binge you in the way that we binge a Netflix box set. That's no longer enough. That's the bare minimum that you need to be doing now, because instead of that kind of short nurture sequence, we know that on average it takes about 6 months for somebody to kind of make that really considered decision of coming to buy the franchise. They've got to make sure it's really, really right for them. And you can imagine, can't you, like you're trying to get people to leave the security of their job to come and invest in your thing. So a long tail nurture sequence is also going to need to be multifaceted, and ideally will help you to qualify your lead better than just going through the motions. And what I really mean by this is, as soon as they've downloaded the brochure, how do we then push them to action to book a call or to fill out a form to register their interest? Once they've done that and they've secured that kind of trust position with us, that they have taken action, then what comes next? How do we nurture them some more while they're waiting for the call that they've booked so that they're less likely to ghost us? After the call, how do we nurture them? Very rarely are they ready to just go for it at that point in time. How do we do the long tail nurture sequence so that we're keeping them in touch without bombarding them with sales messages and continuing to build emotional connection? Now, I have a system for this that I'll be releasing fairly soon, but these are all things that we need to be doing these things rather than a nice to have. They're essential now, because otherwise you're going to really struggle to hit the conversion. It's no longer enough to say, hey, do you want to buy my franchise? We have to move on to all of the things that they need to help them to make a decision, but most importantly, to help them feel safe. And if you're listening to this and you're not a franchisor, you're in online sales, most of this applies to you as well, because it's not enough to say, come buy my course anymore. We have to really over-explain why they should buy the course, how it's going to help them, and then keep in touch while they go through a much longer consideration, because it's not just a consideration, shall I do it? It's, can I trust? How do we build the trust? So I'm going to leave you with that thought. That's it for this week. It's a shorter episode, but let me know your comments, because I'd love to hear what you think about this. This is stuff that most people aren't doing in our industry at the moment, but we need to be. So I'm here to champion that. That's it for this week. I'll see you on the next one. Before we finish up today, I'd love to just thank our podcast sponsors, Book When and Make Your Mark Podcast Agency, without whom this episode wouldn't have been possible. You can find more information on both amazing companies in the show notes. If you've enjoyed listening to today's episode, please also make sure that you hit the subscribe button, and I would absolutely love it if you left a review too. See you next time.